And we are live. Hi, I'm Autumn Keynes with Virtually Connecting, and we are here with some folks over in the University of Warwick at the ALTC conference. We're going to do a round of introductions real quick and then get started with the conversation. Let's start with the on-site folks and have you guys give us an introduction.
I'm Lawrie Phipps from JISC.
I'm Donna Lanclos.
I'm Martin Weller from the Open University.
Dave White from University Arts.
Welcome. Thanks, you guys, for taking a little bit of time to talk with us today. Really appreciate it. Cindy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good morning, folks. Cindy Jennings, South Carolina, where it's really late. Sorry, really early. See, haven't had enough of that. Haven't had enough of that dark roast. University of South Carolina, upstate.
Very nice. What time is it where you're at?
It is 5:30.
Nice.
And I want you guys to know, just quickly, I'm foregoing my usual date with my exercise bike at this time. So the sacrifices I make for the people I love.
Thanks, Cindy.
You're just putting pressure on it to be good though now.
I know.
Very nice. Hey, Ken, can you give us an introduction where you're at and how early did you get up to get here?
So good morning, Ken Bauer. I'm in Guadalajara, so it's 4:30. I woke up about an hour and a half ago.
Very nice. Welcome.
You better be good, man. They got up early.
Up your game.
Oh.
Lindsay, can you give us an introduction?
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I am in Tucson, Arizona, where it's 2:35. I woke up 20 minutes ago. And so I am also missing something very important right now, Cindy. I'm missing sleep. So yeah. So I will be back to bed before long. It's good to be here.
Thanks for getting up for us, Lindsay. All right, Simon.
Hello, I'm Simon. I'm over in Clermont-Ferrand in France, and I'm an English teacher, and I'm trying to chat with some guy in Cameroon, but I'm missing the link.
Oh.
Hate it when that happens. Daniel and Sunday.
Hi, I'm Sunday. I'm in Wisconsin. It's 4:30. I don't know why Ken got up an hour and a half ago. Were we supposed to prepare something? Now I'm scared.
I'm Daniel.
Homework assignment?
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm Daniel. Obviously, I'm in Wisconsin too. It'd be kind of weird to it's 4:30 here. We've got our coffee and we're ready to go.
And cheese?
Do you guys have cheese curds?
Not yet. Too early for cheese curds, I think.
Too early for cheese curds. Blasphemy!
Don't let any Wisconsinians hear me say that, though.
You do know this is being recorded. Wendy, can you give us an introduction real quick?
Hi everyone, Wendy Tallio, Learning Technologist in Central Australia, and it's a nice and easy 7 p.m.
You win, Wendy.
We timed it for you, Wendy.
Yeah, it's all about you.
Yeah, but I will say I have been on many a hangout with Wendy where it has been early in the morning. So she's done her due diligence in the past. So this is just this is one time when she gets to.
Yeah, love this time slot, Virtually Connecting. Can we just keep this time slot, please? Wherever it is in the world.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us from ALTC, you guys. I'm kind of curious how long have each of you been at the conference? What kind of things have you taken in? We've been participating on Twitter. Some of us have been watching the keynotes. We had a great session with Josie Frazier and, gosh, all kinds of folks. But I'm curious, what's going on there on site? How's it been?
Well, I've been here for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, you can ask Dave those questions. I was only here for half of yesterday.
I was here for all of yesterday.
I've been here for the whole lot.
So maybe
you
should ask Martin how
Martin
it's
should
going.
ask you should ask Martin.
Some of us are professionals.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Martin, You were involved in organizing this year, right? I remember last year you were talking about how you were elected and.
Yeah, so I'm now chair of not of the conference, but of the organisation. So it goes vice chair, chair, and then president. I think when you become president, you get a limo and everything.
Yeah,
great, yeah,
like a ribbon.
Isn't Sheila McNeil president now? Does she have a limo?
She's vice chair. So Fiona is president.
So what? Sheila gets like a Vauxhall Corsa.
Yeah. No, it's been a very good conference this year. So run very well. Good keynotes. I don't know if you've been watching the keynotes. It's been a nice mix. So started with Josie and Ian Livingston and then James now. It's been a really good mix, I think. So lots of interesting topics. And it's kind of good to kind of have people who we're familiar with, but also some new people. So really good mix. And I think that's so. I've been to a few sessions, and I think it's always a mixture with all. You kind of get people who come here every year. You know, so they're often kind of exploring issues that we've kind of been around a few times. We're still doing the VLE is dead.
Yeah.
But also it's quite a kind of open environment and community as well. So you get people who have come here and it's their first time, and often their first time presenting about educational technology, because actually they are not ed tech people, they are lecturers in another subject, but have done something interesting in ed tech. So it's good to get that kind of mixture of people.
I've got a question for you, Mark.
Oh, no.
No, but I mean, I think it's interesting to do with I'm hoping it's an interesting question because it's representative of like ed techy stuff as a whole, right? So for me, when I look at alt, there's keynotes that are quite conceptual or intellectual, like talking about the kind of the almost like the philosophy or the principle, or you know, what the hell are we all trying to achieve? And then a lot of the parallel sessions will be, you know, first steps in learning analytics.
Yeah.
And it always feels like it's very difficult to find the join between those two sort of things. How have you felt that's, because to me, I find that just in my day job really, really difficult.
No.
I mean, what do you see any bridges or?
I think you're right. Sometimes it's difficult, but if you've got those two audiences of kind of experienced hands, they don't want to hear that technology is wow kind of talk again. So it needs to be something different, but you don't want to put off newcomers with kind of very in-depth talks. But I think this year the talks have all been applicable to general audience, but also interesting enough for us for time. So, Josie talking about trolls. I think someone like Ian Livingston is kind of a big name. If you don't know him, he's the guy who sort of set up Games Workshop and worked with IDOS and stuff like Tomb Raider and just talk about games and learning. Someone like him, you just kind of want to hear their life story in a way. So that's kind of just a good topic, I think. Jane talking this morning about copyright is kind of applicable to all this. I think they've managed to get that balance about right.
Somebody should Google typology of keynotes, right?
It would be a triangle.
I heard there was maybe just recently a blog post about that or something.
Somebody wrote something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
This is only the second time I've ever been at ALT, and I did a session last year, 2 sessions. And I find it a very weird crowd, and I'm trying to figure out why it's weird. And not weird as in there are a bunch of weirdos, but I'm trying to get a sense of what, well, maybe. I won't. I don't get to talk. I'm an anthropologist. But I'm used to going to conferences that are where the organizing, the reason that you're there is because you share a discipline. And it seems to me that ALT is a crowd of people who share certain things about their job description. And the thing that they share the most is the technology piece of it. So I find that vexing because I think that the most interesting things about technology don't have anything to do with the tech.
I don't think you're 100% right. I agree with you. So I started off going to environmental science conferences, and actually the environmental sciences is very like the alt crowd. So if you go to an environmental science conference, you end up with a whole load of geologists and geographers and biologists and things like that. So you have a mix because, you know, environmental sciences very much had a holistic practice. When you look at alt, I think the alt conference attracts that kind of holistic practice, and it does have this underpinning technology. But you know, when you go down and I mean, I sat having coffee this morning with somebody whose job title was head of innovation, and when I spoke to him, his job's got nothing to do with technology. It's all about innovation in just general academic practice. And I also sat at the same time having a cup of coffee with somebody whose job it is to manage Blackboard. So it's bringing a whole load of people together that wouldn't normally get together. Where else could you bring together a head of academic practice, a professor in e-learning, an anthropologist, and somebody who I don't know what Dave does, but that mix of people, and just to have a chat and actually look at what's going on in the sector.
So I wonder how much that potential gets leveraged, and Martin could probably speak to this. And I think this is Dave's thing about how do you bridge the gap, right? Just because those people are in a room doesn't mean you get beyond the tool-centric stuff. And I wonder if it's just a question of framing for me. It's not that, of course I value an interdisciplinary room, and of course I value all these different people getting together. But if the default connection is actually the least interesting thing, what does that mean for the kinds of conversations that you have?
It's not the default connection. That's not the issue. It's a connection, and that's the leverage. The interesting thing, and if anybody's read Dave Cormier's blog post, The Tyranny of Print, all about content and about how content is actually a problem. Actually, Alt is very much like that. Don't come to Alt for the content. Come to Alt and bring and create.
Wait.
No, seriously. Seriously. Come to Alt. Come to Alt. Talk to people and make your own content at Alt.
We're tweeting that. We're tweeting that.
Yeah. Come to Alt. Sit down with people. Create the content. I had a fantastic chat this morning around connectivism with a guy called Andrew Middleton, and we were talking about the difference between connectivism and rhizomes. There's nobody speaking about that at the conference, but we brought that content, and that's what we take away. So having the content at the conference is great, and it's wonderful to sort of take some of that away, but bring your own content as well. Whether you're speaking or not, whatever conference you go to, bring your own content and create it there.
I think the point you make, Don, is true of education technology as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Martin, can I ask you to get a little bit closer? It's hard to hear you.
So I think the point Donna makes about this conference is representative of educational technology as a whole. It's not, this river's full of lost sharks. We kind of all wander in from different places, and people from anthropology and Dave from the street.
The non-ironing street. Yeah.
I came from artificial intelligence. Not many people train as educational technologists. Perhaps we do a bit more now, but it's less of a discipline. It's kind of people come from different places, and so the conference represents that. People come to it. Some are here as practitioners. I'm doing this particular class and this technology and using this video tool, and it's been really good. And other people are here to talk about educational technology as a discipline and think about how it emerges and evolves. I think you get that mixture. But there's also slightly a problem because there are no kind of agreed readings. If you do psychology, there are certain papers everyone's read. You kind of come through the canon of works. I don't think it's the case with education.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of canon. I don't know. I'm increasingly in rooms that are not my crowd, and I think I now have a habit of trying to figure out who the crowd is and what would the way.
Yeah, but that's because you're tied to the idea of disciplines. I think what the digital does is it just erodes the notion of disciplines, really.
But that digital is an artificial construct.
But yeah, that's what I mean. It travels sideways. It intersects, and I think what I see in the higher education sector is how there's this kind of tide fight between what would be a good idea to facilitate or teach students because the digital exists and all of the things it means, versus them having to sort of nail a discipline. And in my institution, what happens is you're like, well, we should be teaching more sort of digital capabilities at a higher level around collaboration, talking about identity, talking about establishing a network and all the rest of it. Everybody who runs an undergraduate degree goes, that's fine, but our course is full because we're packed with discipline. We've got no time to teach people about how to do things. We've got to teach them the discipline. And I think it's at breaking point.
No, but see, I don't think that being in a discipline necessarily means then you absorb all the content. I think that there's an acculturation and a socialization process, and it's like an origin point, right? And it's not that obviously I think
people's opinion on that would.
That's fine. I'm saying my opinion on that is that the discipline isn't inherently about an ultimate bucket of content. The discipline can be as much about identity and where you start from. The fact is that your practice, as you move through your career, your practice can then emerge out of your discipline. But I think there's a great strength in being grounded in where I came from. Even if now in my practice, I am talking to education technologists and I am talking to people who are pedagogy experts and all of these sorts of things, librarians who come from a variety of different fields. So my practice isn't about keeping the content. My practice is about the connection. What I'm saying is that I'm trying to figure out how people are grounding themselves then when they make these other connections, you know, and
But do they need to be grounded? I mean, I know that to you.
I know you're not.
No, I'm not, and I can't either. We've established that. I'm looking at it from the perspective of an undergraduate, where it is an exercise in reaching a content bar.
So that's the problem. The problem is that we're identifying that content is what's most important about the course.
I'm not.
No, but he is. He's saying that.
I'm saying that you have to be knowledgeable. You have to have consumed or taken on board X amount of content before you can say, I'm an environmental scientist.
Maybe.
Or I'm an anthropologist.
That's the beauty. So
otherwise, I'm an anthropologist because I read a couple of Wikipedia papers.
So can I ask a question? It seems like the point you guys are making is that it's more about, or at least one side of this is making, is that it's more about the connections than it is about the content. But can we connect to content? If people are content, to channel Dave Cormier again, right? If content is people, can we connect to content, and is that a way for us to? Are we ultimately, even when we connect with content, are we just connecting with people, and are we forgetting that that there's people behind that, especially with like big time publishing, where you know corporate publishing, where sometimes that kind of gets mushed and ripped away.
I was thinking about the big publisher thing during Jane's keynote, those of you who are following along, because she talked about you know, people who take content and lock it away, you know, and she didn't call out the big publishers, which I thought was interesting. People and content and connections are all various things that can motivate people. And I think that it's possible to be part of a discipline without being tied to threshold concepts of content.
But you'll be tied to a threshold concept of identity, and you're talking from a privileged position of where you did all that, and now you're where you're at. The question is, should we be teaching more directly, say undergraduates, how to build a network, how not to get?
No, this could be a cultural thing.
Right.
This could be a cultural. In the UK, with our 3-year degree program and our focus on a set level of content, we have been pushed down a certain paradigm. And one of the things that I've learned working with people in the US is the fact that, you know, you do a whole load of different modules and different courses over 4 years.
We waffle around.
But you get to have this broad experience. And I came into environmental sciences by starting off with the Open University, which gave me this smorgasbord of choice that I could actually do a whole range of different modules and actually put together something that was more about me. So I think with some of like the US courses and the Canadian courses where you've got a longer degree program with a much broader base, you start to develop an identity before you major, and you start to sort of build those connections across content. So they actually have a connectivist across content approach. Whereas in the UK, we have this 3-year degree program in England where you sort of force down to get to the minimum, must learn this, then I graduate, then I have to get a job. And all of that emphasis on that, I think, steals away that development of identity and development of connectivism.
Okay, wait.
Should we open it up to some?
But I thought of one. I thought of one thing that I wanted to say, and he was saying, should we teach students to be grounded, and should we tell them that they need to have this content? And in my experience, first-year students decide to study something because they want to engage with that content. So I hesitate to suggest that you start with deconstruction, right? I am a fan of eroding the boundaries and interdisciplinarity, but I think that you have to start somewhere. And it's a really nice confluence between what they want and what actually works a lot of the time is that you do start them off there, but then you also immediately start building the paths and the connections out from that. Martin's got a message.
Can Helen call?
It's my daughter texting.
There's a people connection right there.
Martin was going to say something.
I was going to say, should we open up to some comments from a virtual crowd?
Absolutely, yeah. Why don't you guys kind of jump in? That's a great question.
So I'm going to give you a quick practical example of trying to take that conceptual into something that we're working on our campus that's a little more practical. And a lot of what you are all discussing, we've had this project, which is our quality enhancement plan for our accrediting regional accrediting body, SACS. Our QEP is all about building digital literacy, and we won't even get into the terms and all of that. That's kind of irrelevant, but the project has been just fantastic at bringing folks from lots of different disciplines and challenging them to find the connections and the places where the broad threshold concepts of digital literacy, like curation and narration and all of those things that we identified as important, and the relevance for them in their discipline. And so we're in our final year. We're asking those questions of what comes next. What we've done this beautiful work. We have these beautiful examples of ways that faculty have brought and identified those connections for themselves in their discipline, Donna. And now, what do we do next with all of this? How, if we stop the project in May when the final year is over, what do we do next? So we started conversations last year about creating on our campus a digital something. We're calling it digital studies, for lack of a better term, and not trying to push our boundaries too much here in the South. And we're really committed to preserving the interdisciplinarity of it, but we're forced, because of our faculty governance processes on campus, to find a disciplinary home, a department that must own it, that must be the department of record for grading and all of those traditional siloed things that come with a discipline. And so that discipline is starting, that department who's raised their hand and said, yeah, we'll take it, has started like, okay, well, we don't want all those other people who really aren't related to our discipline in here on the paperwork, because they don't belong on our discipline's course. And we're trying to say, wait a second, the main thing that we want here is the interdisciplinarity. So if you guys are going to host it, you've got to welcome everyone. The artist is just as welcome as the biologist. We're all in this together. So we're having those conversations to kind of preserve the parts of what we worked on for 5 years and brought to pass, and now might die because we're going to be forced back into the traditional structure of the disciplines, and who's going to host it and who's going to own it and who will it belong to and all of those things, when it really should belong to everyone, not just one group.
I think that's a really good point, Cindy, that you kind of, whenever we might have these kind of ambitions, they also need to be realised in very practical senses, and institutions have processes, and as you say, things need to go, and that's for a very good purpose. Things need to be in certain boxes, and lectures need to take place in rooms, and someone needs to be accountable. So there's this, we talked about this last year, David, about the kind of the sediment of process that kind of builds up around these things. It's very difficult to kind of break out from. It's really,
that's a good metaphor, because that sediment forms a bedrock.
Yeah. Well, but it's also gatekeeping, Cindy. I mean, you know, what some disciplines do is they really have hard boundaries around themselves, because they feel they will disappear if they don't have total control. And I think that that's a mistake, because if you build connections, you can maintain who you are and actually be stronger in a network. I'm preaching to the converted here. An interdisciplinary network. So I hope it works out.
We're talking about cultural issues here.
Are we?
So, you know, if we had somebody
Explain culture to me.
There's a Wikipedia page on it, but it is quite long.
It's quite,
is it long range?
But it's not hard.
I don't think personally, and I know that there's not an easy way out of this, I don't think the disciplines should be the root organising principle of a university, for example.
But that's what I'm saying about content being the problem.
Well, there's a difference between discipline and content. I have less problem with content. I hate to admit it, but I kind of agree with Donna that you can't start with deconstruction. You know, when the kids come to university, they're like, I want to be a biological scientist. I want to be an illustrator. I want to be a graphic designer. A lot of them in my institution, they get into the second year and they realize they don't want to be that, or the version of that thing they want to be actually sits between a number of disciplines. And that's where they get frustrated with the institution, because they can't do projects with the fine artists and they can't do projects with the sculptors because they keep getting dragged back into their course. And we try really hard at my institution to try and make that flow, but for exactly the reason Cindy's talking about, it always sort of snaps back again. Personally, I think because we've widened participation, we can't, I still think university is organized on the idea that you know how to do university, but you need to learn a discipline in detail.
Why is that widening participation?
Because not everybody who's going to university has already gone through a schooling system which is a bit like university, which is what it would have been about 40 or 50 years ago. There's about 5 times more people going to university than there were in the mid-70s.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to find the cause and effect of that, and I don't think that.
Well, I was based at an institution where the schools that traditionally fed into that institution equipped those students for the university they were going to, so that when they arrived, they knew exactly how to do that institution, how to do higher education.
That's why you could have 3-year degrees, because you would have the people coming in from, what is it, sixth form. And the specialization.
They were prepared.
My whole, if we're going to deconstruct this way, I mean, my whole thing is I wouldn't allow anybody to go to university until they're in their early 20s, and then I'd make them do an open university degree to start with.
Well, I like that.
Well, that's fine.
That's great.
I mean, there's no problem.
Sure, the open university was like that.
I mean, don't you guys call it? It's in the Scottish model over here, where it's actually a 4-year degree. You get to do like gen ed, and like Lawrie was saying, North American style exploration before you settle into a specialty, and I do think that's the strength of our system, and it was something that I found deeply weird when I came over here to study, that all of a sudden when you're 19 you're a mathematician. That feels odd to me.
Which is true, but that isn't solving Cindy's problem, and Cindy's issue is that will still exist.
So I'm not talking about let's solve the problem by going on a little tour and then picking your favorite, because you've still got disciplines.
Yeah.
And we've still got Cindy.
So what I'm talking about is that
useful.
a large portion of higher education needs to be teaching you how to learn, or helping you to become the person you want to be in a much more general, much more abstract way.
So that's about staff development and about having lecturers who actually know about teaching.
There's an element to that, but it's also about saying, actually, if that's all the time that we've got to play with while you're at university, then only this much is for your discipline, but that much is for learning how to learn, learning how to be, in a much more kind of agile.
But it's
how do you collaborate?
Staff, right? Staff are the ones who teach.
I think those projects, like if you think of it as real estate, at the moment we use up nearly all the real estate on content of the discipline. There's quite a lot of, although we do try and embed those kind of general skills.
It's all bolt on. It's all bolt on.
But it's an argument often about who gets.
Wait, Simon is saying something about this is the case in France. Simon, go.
Yeah, I find this each time that I come to the UK or go to another country, is that when people start talking about university, I don't recognize what they're talking about.
What do you see?
In my context in Clermont-Ferrand in France, the kids don't come at all from the same backgrounds. They can go to a university if they've got a baccalaureate. The first year often is a sorting year where a lot of the students who haven't got the level to actually survive, they disappear. So maybe like 40–50% of those students will disappear in the first year. And it's a huge social problem, because we have people coming in from the ex-colonies, from Mayotte, for example, and these kids, not only are they not adapted to the university system, they don't even have the correct language. They are not adapted to the culture, because Mayotte culture is completely different to the mainland French culture. And the whole issue of being prepared for university, kids can go to university, it costs them €500 a year, maybe, in fees. So it's a cold game. And I think also from my perspective, being an English language teacher, I teach right across disciplines. See things at all in the same way, because for me, my interest is in education and is not discipline bound. If you like, my discipline bound is, how can I act to actually make connections between all these different people? And let's talk about these kids What are we doing? What the hell are we doing with these kids? Are we listening to them? And often, even the colleagues aren't listening to each other.
So I think that's where the ed tech thing comes back in, because of the way that the digital is essentially disciplinarily agnostic, and that's why, you know, the alt crowd isn't a particular crowd, which is one of its great advantages, in that so it can, and I think that's why we end up having these, you know, in some ways the digital becomes a Trojan horse for, not Trojan, but it becomes a that's a weird way of looking at it. It becomes a way into these much larger issues about the structure of what we're trying to achieve. And I think that's what's really interesting to me, is that over perhaps the last 7 or 8 years, the technology has in effect settled down and become a little bit more stable. It still requires money and skill to make it run, and it's shifting the conversation more towards, well, hang on a minute, does this even work in principle? And I find myself part of conversations more often that are about the principle of the university or the structure of the university. And I think that's partly because the digital is one of the things that's acting as a catalyst for those kind of questions to be asked. That there's no doubt that the digital is part of what is blurring the boundaries of the disciplines. And there's no doubt that the digital is shifting the emphasis back onto things like, well, hang on a minute, what does it mean to learn? What does it mean to be a good student? You know, what sort of characteristics does a person who leaves higher education, what do we hope that they'll have? My problem is that all of that's being dealt with as a series of bolt-ons around the disciplines, and it's only the students that are privileged enough to have the time that can take advantage of those.
There's a problem. I don't disagree with what you're saying wholeheartedly. But there is a
that's as good as she does.
But there is also a problem where I think, and maybe this is what's happening with Cindy, in that the digital is being seen by university structures as being more important, both to live and work in society and for the infrastructure of the university. And as that happens, and in the same way that the digital University of South Carolina upstate, yes, good job, has now said it needs to have a home in a scholarly department, that's what will happen. You know, we have to be very careful that we don't lose ed tech practitioners and ed tech to the scholarly practice in departments if we don't keep up with scholarly practice. And actually, maybe ed tech does need to become a discipline, so that it has a unit. Otherwise, we end up losing it.
No, but then it loses. I mean, if part of the problem of disciplines is the culture of gatekeeping, and I think those two can be disentangled. I think that one of the problems that Cindy is dealing with is not about disciplines are bad, but it's about people who don't have a lot of power and influence seeing the possibility of having even less of that and then locking things down, right? So it might be possible to come from a position of being grounded in a discipline, and also to be generous enough because you're not worried about being disappeared, to make the connections and then do these digital things. You know, I see a real anxiety about people thinking that they're going to be erased from the university because it's decided that they're not important anymore. You talk to anybody in the philosophy department, and it's not that people don't need to have a grounding in certain ways of thinking. It's that people turn to them and say, how are you going to get a job with a philosophy degree? I mean,
but in my world order, the philosophers would be important.
Yes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I'm just saying
but they're not.
That the people that are losing, you're losing something, and the reason that people feel that it needs to have a discipline is because of the structures that are several hundred years old. Yeah. And we need to sort of look at that before we start to fix anything.
Well, I'm in an environment, well, I suppose we're all in an environment.
Wait,
go on, say.
I was just going to say, Lindsay just put something in the chat here about students being privileged enough with time, but also with the context. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, Lindsay.
Yeah. I was mostly just thinking through Dave's comment about students being privileged enough with the time to sort of explore their identity and explore maybe, you know, digital concerns or sort of interdisciplinary concerns. But I mean, it has more to do with that because students don't understand. No, not necessarily. You can't assume that because you tell them that they have some autonomy or authority to explore those other issues, that they're actually going to take that and believe that. I mean, the expectations, as Lawrie pointed out, around, these are institutions that are hundreds of years old. People sort of have expectations about what that's going to look like based on what they've heard other people say, based on other people's experiences that they know of. And so it's sort of this idea of, we can talk about this amongst ourselves, but how do we, and there's no quick answer to this, it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but how do we empower students to know that they can focus on these things too, especially if they come from backgrounds where maybe college was never supposed to be an option, and now they're here, and how do they fit in there, and how do they negotiate this sort of new cultural space? And I think attaching to content or expectations or what they see as how it should be is one of the, it's not quite what I want to say, but one of the easier ways to do that.
Well, and Simon makes the point that, this notion that students would have time or have that privilege in the rest of the, at UNC Charlotte, we've got students who, when they're on campus, they go to class and then they leave campus because they have to take care of their children, work at their job, do these other sorts of things. So the notion that they would just sort of have contemplative time to reflect on their practice and so if we're not building it in for them, or if we're not helping our students acquire time to prioritize the kind of exploration. What I see in the whole, we need to get our students degrees so that they can get jobs things, is a relentless drive towards getting them in a degree program and then getting them out with a credential. And the notion that you would have time to explore, is this a really good fit for me? What does it mean? Dave's talking about students who show up and they're like, oh, I don't want to be that kind of graphic designer. I want to be this other sort of graphic designer. My first-gen students at UNC Charlotte who've been told that they really need to get a business degree because then they need to get a job are not thinking about, well, do I want that sort of degree or that sort of degree? They're being told, you will focus and you will do the degree because that's how, so the reflective moment.
But that's not higher education, is it?
Well, no, but the reflective moment is now being reserved for people who are going to be okay anyway.
I wonder if somewhere along the line we lost our sense of what it means to be a success. And at the end of the day, we just ended up, if you make a lot of money, that means success, right? It doesn't matter if you're not happy, right? I want to take a little break really quickly because Mahabali just joined us. Hi, Maha.
Hi, Maha.
Hi, Phil. I just kicked out my last meeting so I can come to the end of this.
I just emailed you, by the way. Can I ask Sunday a question?
Do it.
Where's Sunday? I can't see her. Oh, there she is. Sunday, you were talking about your niece on a blog post recently and about how disappointed that she couldn't actually do all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, that she's got to be disappointed in her degree experience because of, she wants to do so much and the structures actually hold her back as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote that when she hadn't even started school yet, and now she's started, and she's going into physics. And yeah, she now is overwhelmed and has no time. She runs as well, so she has, personal ideas, but she is, that idea of her not having time to explore other things outside of what she's chosen is a reality to her right now. And yeah, and she's at a state school and it's physics and that's what happens, right?
So I think this comes back to Martin's kind of real estate idea, which is that that we fill up all the available time with that disciplinary focus. I think coming back on the unanswerable question, we need to have more conversations with students about what the point of higher education is, what the opportunities are. And we need to...
But that's why I'm saying to Sunday, because she's doing physics, right? But she wanted to do an online literature course. She wanted to be physics and do literature. Yeah. And it's like, that would be a really well-rounded person.
But the point is, students often don't know.
No.
So I remember the first day of my degree, I did psychology. And they said, long after you've forgotten all the content, you remember how to be a scientist. And I thought, no, I want all the sexy psychology content. But they were absolutely right.
That's a sentence I never thought.
So you
sexy psychology. You like all the weird.
But I think that's the point of being a student. You don't know what it is you want. So
that's why I was lucky in the Open University.
But that's my point, is that content of that conversation we need to have with students is saying, look, the rhetoric and all the rest of it, employment, discipline, you know, is one thing. But actually, you know, and I know that you don't know what you want because you filled in a form when you were like 17. You haven't got, you've turned up, you don't know what the hell's going on. Our institution provides you a space to figure that out.
Unless you're not a 17-year-old who's never done anything. You know, we've got students who were in their 20s and their 40s.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I'm saying that still 90%.
They deserve the same thing.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, I'm not, the age thing was merely demonstrative.
Well, it's not about age.
Specifically an age thing.
It's not about age.
That's what I just said.
Yeah. I'm just saying that actually maybe we should not have higher education until you're in your 20s.
No, but yeah, but that is about age.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to annoy you now.
Oh, okay, it worked.
Do we want any more comments from participants? Otherwise, this lot will just carry on talking.
Yeah, we haven't. We weren't given a deadline.
What's Sunday
Were
saying?
people expecting me to kill Dave before the keynote? Because we're gonna save that for on stage. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I've got the live streaming URL ready to go.
Excellent.
Great.
But Anya, do you want to talk about what you're going to talk about this afternoon, or have we touched on it?
You know, we have touched on some of the themes. I mean, it will surprise no one to know that I don't actually want to talk that much about technology. I want to talk about people, and I want to talk about teaching and learning.
Yeah, but the point is that.
Tell me the point.
No, wait. Whoa. Here's the thing, right? Because this
spoiler alert.
Right, and then we can go to an ad break.
He's gonna wrap
the
it
point?
up.
No, I'm not going to wrap it up. What interests me is the fact that it's the digital stuff has opened the door to allow us to have these conversations about things that aren't about the technology. Because what's happening is the technology is just acting as it just shines a light on some more fundamental things. So my feeling is that the digital gives me the right to discuss things that are actually more important than the digital. You know, and that's so we don't talk directly about technology very much, but the reason we're talking at all is because the technology exists.
But that's
I just want to acknowledge it. Oh yeah, no,
that's not the same across
look
the
at the
sector.
shirt. The shirt's a privileged man.
It's not
He's
the same
so
across the
privileged
sector.
he didn't have to iron.
There are a lot. You're in an academic development department at the moment,
yeah.
And a lot of people that are having to deal with EdTech issues are in IT departments that are talking about infrastructure.
And we will be acknowledging that in the talk. But
well,
I'm not casual about that.
That seemed pretty casual.
No. Don't take that for granted
It's
at
not
all.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart casual. Okay.
You can acknowledge that reality and then still have other conversations, because if we
it's not one or the other.
Reminding her, yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, and if we take a whole lot of time going, you know, talking about infrastructure and.
But that's the beauty of alt though as well. That's the thing about when you come to alt, you saying that you can't find a discipline. The thing with alt is you've got people like Dave who are in this privileged, I'm not in an IT department position, but you've also got people who are dealing with the day-to-day reality of having to go in, fix Blackboard, and still wanting to do something pedagogical and still wanting to do something innovative. But so you've got this mix of people, and they can actually learn an awful lot from each other. And actually, when you talk to some of the people that sole job is about fixing the technology, you can learn an awful lot about the pedagogy.
Yes, my point is that those people who are asked to fix Blackboard on their campuses are frequently not invited into the rooms where they would get to talk about pedagogy.
Talking about gatekeeping.
And it's not just about pedagogy. We could learn an awful lot about usability and actually just watching people.
Yeah, but we don't have.
You should try that.
But with the rooms with that mix.
Is it?
Yeah.
We should look at that.
The room with those mix of people in is a rare thing within an institution. I think alt perhaps does contain that, but even I see at alt two cultures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which I think is represented on the one hand by perhaps the keynotes, and on the other hand by some of the things that you see in the parallel sessions. And it requires constant kind of nudging and facilitation to get those two cultures to flow into each other. They tend to go back to their corners. And I think that if you want to like a pragmatic job to do, it's constantly trying to bring those two cultures together. Because they do separate out. You can introduce things to people to people, and cultures to cultures. And I think part of what the institution needs to do is to provide mechanisms that are constantly trying to glue that back together again.
Okay, I think before we wrap up, should I open it up to one more question from the audience, which I'm sure there will be a really snappy, quick answer to.
Wait, what?
Yeah, we might need to give everybody a minute to kind of take that in. Ken's saying that he's having some conversations on the side about this kind of stuff already. Did you want to speak to that a little bit, Ken?
I was trying to bring back my thoughts on that about the fact that the technology, people implementing Blackboard, and I just avoid Blackboard on my system, although, you know, they're nice people here, but they tend to just lock it down into a controlled environment that the faculty and students just have no control over what they're doing inside Blackboard. I can't archive my stuff. I can't. Mariana Funes was talking about people having 4 groups or 4 sections of a course, and no, we can't put those all together for you because the rules and stuff like that, where it's just they're not focusing on how we want to use the systems. So I'm a geek, I'm a computer scientist, so I just go out and build my own stuff. But not everyone has that luxury.
No.
Well, some of
But
that
that,
gets...
I think, sorry, carry on, Autumn.
I was just going to say that some of that gets back to those digital literacies, right? We need them for the students, we need them for the faculty. What were you going to say, Dave?
I was just going to say that's classic institutional shenanigans just playing out in the digital with this sort of center control and this kind of actual practitioners. And I think sometimes what happens is we just see sort of inherent characteristics of large institutions of playing out in digital. To me, that issue that you just mentioned is again not about the technology. It's just playing out in the technology. And that'll be a constant tension. There'll be a constant tension there. But I suppose unless you've got the right people talking to each other, unless there's some give and take on both sides, then that's never going to change.
But those people don't always have the same amount of power.
And that was part of Mariana's point, was the people that need to be in that conversation aren't in the room.
Yeah, and you've got the amplification of the gap with the power structures and the lack of access to conversations that happen, and who's making the decisions about Blackboard, Ken, and who says that it's supposed to be locked down that way, and the org chart and who says who gets to do what is also part of the problem.
I mean, some
right,
of
and I'm sorry, and the faculty, they don't usually know that it's possible. Whereas I'm the nerd behind the scenes, and I go like, I know you can push that button and turn it on.
But my point would be on that is that pretty much anything's possible. But if you run an institution on the basis of everybody doing anything possible, then it becomes impossible to maintain some kind of evenness of experience for the students, and that's the tension. Okay, so I'm not. Yeah, you see.
Yeah.
So I'm not. Fair enough, Ken.
Everybody's the same. Let's make them all drones.
So the problem with what you're just saying is not to do with the students and not to do with the university. It's to do with league tables. And every time we try and do something innovative, we've got in the back of our mind, is this going to have students complaining, or is this going to have students
I think it's
separated?
got more to do with scale and homogeneity.
No, that's nonsense.
No, I think it does.
The argument about that very English moment was brought to you by Lawrie Phipps. The argument for consistency. Oh, we can't have you doing that thing in Blackboard over there because then the students won't know what to expect when they go, as if in a face-to-face classroom that doesn't have technology, they get an absolutely consistent experience across the board.
That's how life works.
That argument has always driven me.
But that's fine. But I hear so many ed tech people talking about the importance of consistency.
And
it's absolute rubbish.
It should be the importance of systems that work.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing as consistent.
Yeah. So the problem comes when everybody does something different and everybody needs supporting at the same time.
So that's about your scale. That's about your problem,
Yeah, that's about
not the
scaling
students,
support.
and not about the lecturers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but
Maybe what we should do with that
it's too expensive.
take away the system, take away the BLE, and say, hey, you guys, you go and procure your own and do what you want to do.
You could do that, yeah. But then you'd have a lot of people that didn't have the skills to do it, you see.
Yeah,
so we
you have
support
to-
them in their skills.
Yeah, but then that becomes extremely expensive.
Concise answers. We're really bringing it.
Well, it's good. This is the actual.
I don't agree there, Dave, because I run some of these systems and they take 5 minutes to push button, and people take 5 days. So
Sorry,
I don't. There's some of these changes to the system that take like 2 seconds, and I know because I've run Moodles and other things for other faculty that want to get out of our Blackboard or what we're using, and it can take support staff 2 weeks to do something that takes me 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's not about the VLE. It's just about it's about having technology that's at institutional level across the whole institution. It doesn't matter whether it's the VLE or whatever it is. This is the same tension. It just comes back to the VLE because it's the easiest example.
Okay.
I like
How
that.
are you doing on time over there, you guys? I don't want to keep you.
I think we're gonna need. I haven't had breakfast.
Yeah.
I need some food.
It's not a time issue. It's a food issue.
It is a food issue.
Time is food, is money, is reality.
I haven't had tea yet.
Well, thank you. I think Wendy was saying something there.
Oh, I'm with Donna. I haven't had tea yet.
Oh, okay. Well, we're all gonna go and get some food, and then we'll be polite again.
Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today. Maha had to drop out. She wanted me to tell everybody that she said goodbye. We're going to be watching your live stream of your keynote. I know a bunch of us are. We're really excited about it, and thank you so much for just taking a little bit of time to talk with us today.
We're going to try to have the Twitter stream up behind us. Martin's going to tell us if that's possible. Otherwise, we're going to end up interacting with the Twitter stream post facto. But that's
all right. Well, you'll see us in there for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, all. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye, everybody.
Great to see you guys.
Bye. It was great.
Thanks, everyone. Wonderful.
Daniel, you owe me a beer.
And we are still live, everybody. I'm just going to keep the stream open so that we can have a little bit of conversation amongst ourselves here. Let's see if anybody wanted to do any kind of reflection conversation just for a couple of minutes before we turn the live stream off.
No, that was awesome. Thank you. I have my microphone working.
No, I heard you. I totally heard you.
That was great.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's a great conference. Simon and I actually did, we kind of tag teamed ALTC last year in terms of virtual buddying. So I wasn't aware of it as a conference until then, and so it was really neat to get to meet somebody, and then this year to get to continue to build those connections, continue to meet people, and get a little glimpse of what's going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Autumn, I was on that Colton when he was the guest speaker. So it was really good to see you again, Martin, in the virtual buddy realm, and yeah, different angle on alt again.
As you can see, it was quite hard to control the conversation this end.
Oh, you're still there, Martin. Hi. I thought you were leaving.
Yeah, but there's such good energy. It's really good to have that conversation with it.
You're breaking
and
up
it worked really well. I was just sitting back enjoying my coffee and just listening in.
Yeah, it was great for an early morning kind of deal. So
you guys
have
a bit more sleep now? Another couple of hours sleep before you start the day? Or?
No, I got to wake up my daughter in about 10 minutes and then start the prep for school.
And I'll say if anybody else needs to drop out, that's fine. You totally can.
I'm going to go.
Keep anyone.
I'm going to say
Bye,
goodbye.
Cheers, Martin.
Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy the hockey next week, Martin.
I will do.
World Cup.
It was a lot of fun. Bye, guys.
Thank you all so much for everything. Really appreciate it.
Now, one thing I just wanted to throw in as this conversation was happening was one of the great things about conferences like ALTC and other better kind of ed tech conferences are those sessions that people start out with context of their classroom or their discipline, and those are usually the best kind of sessions because they give you all that context, and that's where the conversations can start happening. So I don't know, that's what I love about a good session at that type of conference.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked it when things are contextualized, especially when they're outside of the context that I find myself in all of the time. That's one of the things that I love about virtually connecting, right? Is that it helps me to see those other points of view. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they're, you know, I mean, we're all, I mean, to even participate in virtually connecting, you've got to have a computer, you've got to have a, you know, an internet connection, you've got to have digital literacies enough to know how to connect these things. So, I mean, even those are privileged voices, but just being able to kind of get a perspective from another country, get a perspective from another environment, a different socioeconomic status. And that's what I think conferences, you know, generally do for us, is they provide those focal points for us to come together. And contextualize things in a little bit of a different way.
There's just a story I have about that. You were talking about context, because during the session, I was trying to chat with a friend in Cameroon, and he asked me, could you send me the link to the stream? I said, yeah, sure, I'll send you the link. And so I assumed he was one of the 7 people watching us. And then I received another message, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that I can only have access to YouTube before 3 p.m. GMT.
Wow.
So I have no idea why he doesn't have access to YouTube, or whether he has only access at a particular time. But I remember seeing photographs of his classroom. I was talking to Autumn about this just before. He's a French language teacher and of an English-speaking part of Cameroon, and I'm an English teacher in France. Compare the class size. Well, when I go to Warwick University, because I work with Teresa McKinnon in Warwick, they maybe have 12, 15 students in their classroom. When we come back to Clermont-Ferrand, we have 45, and we're working with 2 teachers. And a lot of the teachers have like 28, and they still don't have Wi-Fi in some classrooms. You go to Cameroon, he has 60 students in his classroom, and no access to technology. Yeah. So
different
I find it very difficult now to actually go to some of these tech conferences when it's so context bound in terms of privilege that it's impossible to actually make any sense of it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just so important to keep those contexts in our mind. Go ahead, Wendy. I think you were about to say something.
I was just going to say that's kind of a different gap it's talking about than the gap they were mentioning about building bridges between keynote speakers that might be at different levels. And I remember that being talked about at PEI as well, where a keynote felt might have left people in the lurch, kind of, and there was a bit of a gap. But that, the realities of teaching and the realities of YouTube access, or whether you can actually use Twitter as a back channel. In the previous virtually connecting session, you know, that's can't really build a bridge for. If you don't have the tech there, then you don't have.
So something which struck me very much listening to that was, firstly, the lack of space, because the conversation was very much engaged. Secondly, this idea of filling up time and the whole time constraint business. We're filling up time.
Yes.
And for me, this is a sort of quite worrying aspect of what goes on in a lot of institutions and a lot of lives, is we fill up, we fill up, we fill up, and it's so we don't feel. And I think that with, whether it be with colleagues or with learners, students, the first thing that I sort of have tried to do now is to actually detox, is to take it all away. take away the technology. I was saying to Autumn just before that when I work on digital literacies, I take away the machines and start with how is this extending and what is this extending in terms of our humanity. And it's the same with a language. How is this going to extend you? In what spaces? And I think that one of the privileges that I have is that we'll right across hierarchies and across disciplines because I'm a language teacher. So I'm constantly meeting with French people who are maybe a much higher social status or in a hierarchy, but they are rendered vulnerable because they cannot actually use the language. And that is a great help because it breaks down those barriers and we can actually see that we're actually all in the same boat. And what we need to do is actually stop and give ourselves space to actually...
It's the thing that you don't understand that's giving you the space.
It's this sort of frantic. We need to have more tech. We need to have more Wi-Fi. We need to have more computers. We need to have new, I don't know, Bluetooth buds on the ears. And now we're worrying about terrorism, so we have to make sure that all the computers are locked down. And now, oh my God, we got these viruses and etc. 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 It's impossible to control. You cannot control it. It's completely, it's insane.
Or even away from the tech, Simon, of crossing faculty in the hallways. And I don't have time to talk about all this humanist stuff because I got to cover my content. And I'm already 2 weeks behind. Yeah.
Yeah. It's mad. We have to go back to basic. What the hell are we doing? What does it mean to be a researcher? What does it mean to be a teacher? What does it mean to be a student? What's a job?
Yes.
A lot of students are not going to get jobs.
Or
a lot of students don't
they're going to get so many jobs they don't have, you know, a job. They just have a whole bunch of stuff to do.
It's funny though because tech creates that vulnerability too that you're talking about, Simon, about languages. Sure. Although people are less comfortable with not having knowledge about tech, I think it makes people nervous. But I think that vulnerability can be a good place or a good thing to recognize and use. Sorry, I'll turn off my microphone.
No, don't. You're making it human with a cat.
So listen, guys, we can continue this conversation, but what I'm going to do is stop the live stream so that just because I don't know.
Can I just say something before you do that?
Yeah, please.
Because Sandy just made a really great point. And for me, it's this business of vulnerability. And this is where the expert jumps in. And it's precisely the question of how does the expert behave? Does the expert enable the person to develop for themselves expertise? Or does the expert maintain his mythology of being the only one who can actually understand anything about this?
Right.
And lock it down to his because it's protecting his position. And I think a lot of ed tech people that I come across it's about, I want to protect my position because my God, this is going to be farmed out to somebody else.
Oh yes, fear in power structure of the faculty and the tech support is just massive, and I see it every day because a lot of those people are my ex-students, being in the computing field.
Yeah, and if you go to a big corporation, you go to Michelin, where I live, the computer staff who used to work for Michelin, they no longer work for Michelin because they were non-essential productive staff. So they were all farmed out and went off to work for subcontractors. Same job, less pay, less security.
Yeah.
And if they get fed up with them, they just find somebody else. So I think that is where we actually have to sit down and start speaking, is that where is this going? And we don't have protection of our positions. We don't have it.
No, I think in a lot of cases we don't. And again, that can be contextualized too. But But yeah, I'm gonna give one more chance for anybody to kind of slip anything in at the last minute before I stop the broadcast. And like I said, we can continue to talk. It's 6:30 here. I've got another, I don't know, probably 20 minutes before I have to start getting ready. So, does anybody else have anything they want to say before I stop the broadcast?
No, I think that's great. Thank you so much, Autumn.
Hey, thank you for showing up.
Thanks, Autumn.
And thank you to our team.
Thanks, everybody.
Who stuck around, and anybody else who's watching the broadcast. All right, I'm going to stop it now. Thanks, guys.